And ahead on CNN, actor Richard Dreyfuss is slamming new diversity rules for the Oscars, saying the requirements make him, quote, vomit.
All right, friends, stick around because actor Richard Dreyfuss is pushing back against new diversity guidelines for the Academy Awards, saying they make him, quote, vomit. We're going to explain his reasons next.
Because it's patronizing. Because it says that we're so fragile that we can't have our feelings hurt.
Well, actor Richard Dreyfuss has some strong comments on the Academy Awards' new diversity guidelines. Speaking with PBS's Margaret Hoover, Dreyfuss slammed the new rules on diversity and inclusion standards for Best Picture eligibility.
They make me vomit.
Why?
Because this is an art form. It's also a form of commerce, and it makes money, but it's an art. And no one should be telling me as an artist that I have to give in to the latest, most current idea of what morality is. I'm sorry, I don't think that there's a minority or a majority in the country that has to be catered to like that.
All right, let's bring in my panel, see what they have to say. So, LZ, here's what the Academy wants in terms of their criteria. Here's their new criteria. Films must meet at least 2 of the 4 benchmarks to be eligible to win Best Picture. They include featuring actors from underrepresented groups in significant roles or accounting for at least 30% of the cast. Similar criteria in terms of working on the film behind the scenes, a significant commitment to paid apprenticeships, internships, and career development, significant representation among the teams devoted to marketing, publicity, and distribution. So, I mean, I assume he's saying that none of that has to do with creativity, that he's saying he's an artist and that maybe even those kinds of bureaucratic mandates hurt the art. Your thoughts?
Well, he has built his career being able to take advantage of all of the dynamics of systemic racism that hits every aspect of American life, including Hollywood. And it would have been great if Mr. Holland had decided to fight for what's right back in the 90s when he was on top. This seems more like sour grapes. This seems more like I'm an out-of-work actor and I'm struggling, I need to blame someone. Oh, I'm going to blame the brown people. I'm sitting here going, I think the most important aspect of this entire conversation has nothing to do with what's in front of the camera, but actually what's going on behind the camera. Because as a person who has worked in media as long as I have, 20 plus years, I can tell you, I've seen plenty of networks sprinkle a little dust in front of the camera and it's baby powder everywhere else. So it's important that the Oscars point that out, and that's part of the process as well. So Mr. Dreyfuss, I'm sorry that you have to share all of a sudden. But if you really feel committed about the blackface, go for it, bro. As you were saying.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he was saying that he can't play Othello. What a travesty. And I'm saying do it. There's no part of those rules you just read that said he can't be in blackface. I doubt anyone would care to see it. I don't think he'd be nominated for an Oscar. So I'm just confused about why he chose to speak. It seems like he needs to feel relevant. He has not been nominated for an Oscar in any role. Denzel being nominated for Macbeth, it was a great performance. So I just don't think his concerns are relevant to the reality of the rules from the Academy.
Sure.
Yeah, look, I think for me, I'm less interested in the comments of Mr. Holland's opus. I'm more concerned about the reality of what is attempting to be achieved. I'm old enough to remember when we had 227 on TV, when we had Rock on TV, when we had strong black roles in prime time. They were underappreciated, they were underpaid, but they certainly were getting people to watch. And my concern is that even if we look at something, as dissimilar but also similar as the NFL, where we've had the Rooney Rule in place, where we're forcing NFL franchises to interview black coaches for senior football positions, the results nearly a decade later, they speak for themselves. It is not working. And so for me, I get tired of people of color, black people, Hispanic people, begging others to do what we have the power to do for ourselves. And when I look at something as recent as Tower Heist, which was supposed to be, in the words of Eddie Murphy, a black Ocean's 11, and yet again, we didn't have the wherewithal wherewithal to come together or the resources put aside to be able to make something like that come to fruition. So to me, to heck with the Oscars. Who cares about your cheap trophy anyway? I think, again, we have to find better ways to come together as a community of creatives to make sure that we are represented behind the camera, but also to make sure that we are doing our part to make sure that Tyler Perry is not the only person with a studio to ensure that we can actually bring those great stories, the first Black emperor of Rome, right, to talk about people like Robert Smalls who stole that Confederate ship, to talk about the fact that the first person ever shot in a Revolutionary War was a Black man. I mean, these are great stories about Black people connected and rooted in the American experience.
But you don't think that people can mandate, that the Academy can mandate that these things happen?
My concern is that it's not going to work because people hire who they know, people do what they want to do, and at the end of the day, to your point, power concedes nothing without a demand, but if you're not holding the actual handle of the knife, you're still holding the blade. To me, again, we are not learning from history. We need to be focused on coming together.
The way this rule is structured, where you only have to meet 2 of the 4 criteria, you can do it just on the back of the apprenticeships and the marketing part, which basically means for a major studio, this is a budget line item. They can take a movie that has whatever level of representation on screen and in the production and get it to qualify by throwing money at the other 2 categories of this. So I think that it is a little bit of an empty gesture. I also don't think it's an appropriate role for the Academy. I think the category is called Best Picture. You're supposed to be evaluating the product, not the manner in which the product was made. And I think if members of the Academy want to vote for a film that doesn't meet 2 of the 4 criteria, I think they ought to be able to. It doesn't make me vomit. I don't have a strong opinion about it in the way that Richard Dreyfuss apparently does. But no, I think that, I don't think this is the function of an award like this. I think that's a function of the studios themselves and the commitments that the studios choose to make.
We know the studios aren't really.
I will push back on the idea that the idea to be a Best Picture doesn't encompass the production part of it, because the producers are on stage to accept an award. It's not just the actors and the director. The producers are up there, and oftentimes the producers are the one that's talking. So they represent not just the art in front, but the entire production, which would include who is actually shooting the film, who's doing the makeup and hair, and et cetera.
Right, but it's Best Picture. It's not Best Production. I mean, yes, they award it to the producers at the end, but I don't think it's the role of the Oscars to set out guidelines about the manner in which in which the film should be made. It's supposed to be. It's a criticism exercise.
Also, I mean, are we pretending that the Oscars are a meritocracy in any sense? Like the movies that are they're not at all.
Well,
I mean, the movies that are shown, they are supposed to be, that's right, but are they? I mean, like, literally, the movies that get made, it's all political from the beginning of the process to the end. So to pretend that this is like an actual, like an Olympic course where we're influencing something that isn't already heavily influenced. I mean, the actual Academy that votes for these things is already overwhelmingly white. So it's not as if changing the things that happen behind the scenes is going to change who's voting, the electorate, what's happened historically. I just think that it's silly for an actor to be this upset about it when the reality is these studios are going to do whatever they can to keep the exact same stuff in place.
Especially the history that we've seen of white actors taking Black roles and roles of other minorities. Like,
no one's, I mean, Scarlett Johansson still exists.
I'm even to that point, right?
Guys,
I think
we have to go. We have to go. I know, these crazy things called breaks that we have to take, but we will continue this during the break.